Let's get into the most talked about player in Counter-Strike. No, it's not Ziwu. No, it's not Donk. No, it's not even Simple. It's Kyousuke, a player that played for Spirit. Well, played for is appropriate now, but played for Spirit Academy and has been probably one of the most overhyped players because he's never played a tier 1 game yet. So I definitely can say that as being a reasonable assertion. And yet the anticipation about where he was going to go, whether he'd be airlifted into Spirit's first team, whether he'd go to Falcons, whether someone else would swoop in and purchase him. The reason that the word Kyousuke is spammed on HLTV forums as a meme is because everybody talks about this kid because everyone is expecting Donk 2.0, which would be ridiculous if it were to happen. It would be the most insane thing. It would literally be lightning striking in the same place twice, both of those, that place being Spirit Academy. Anyway, the move has occurred, so we can take a look at it. And of course, it is Falcons, if you're an American. And this initially was reported prior to PGL Bucharest. So a long time ago in Counter-Strike terms. And basically, the original report was that Tezes was going to be dropped and Kyousuke was going to be brought in. And that seemed very plausible at that time because Tezes was the new name and Magisk is somebody who ultimately, because he's simpatico with Zonic, it felt like Magisk was going to have a job for life. That isn't what ended up happening. We'll talk about that in a moment. But anyway, that is what was going on. It was at the same time Dexter was essentially told, this is your last tournament, and he played so well that he ultimately powered Falcons to winning that tournament, with the caveat that Vitality weren't in attendance and some of the big teams weren't in attendance. It was their first ever trophy win ever since they started the Zonic era of the project, and it's all they've won since. And we've obviously subsequently seen a disastrous exit from the Austin Major, throwing a 5v3 on Inferno against MIBR to eventually lose in multiple overtimes.
This is over. It's done.
Yeah, it's always
the only benefit is
fucking believe. Stop quitting on them. Don't you dare quit on this.
I mean, they have util on the 3 on A. But,
stop.
But Insanity's fucking cooked.
Don't
At least
die through the smoke.
It's a short way out.
It's okay. It's okay.
Oh yes, spam through smoke again. Go on, please. It went really well for the last guy.
Come on, get him, get him, get him.
Okay.
I had to say it, Lauren.
Oh, yeah.
It's not over yet. It's not over yet. It's not over yet.
No smoke.
It's over.
It's
It's over.
It's not over. Fuck you all. It's not over. It's not over.
You missed the shot! Oh my god!
No!
Wait,
No
wait,
way.
lock in,
No
lock in,
way.
lock in.
No way.
No
way.
Wait.
No way.
No fucking way! Double tap, get a digit, get a digit!
Oh, what the fuck?
Oh my god!
It's never over.
What?
I
in
fucking
the
love you, Dust.
fuck?
I love you, Dust. I fucking love you, Dust. I love you, man.
Dude, this is fucked.
That's unforgivable.
How do you
shit.
throw that? How do you actually fucking throw that? That's
Tessus
insane.
was just like
crazy.
nothing on banana.
Oh,
Dust
Dust has fully self-actualized.
Dust, you are no longer a replicant. Welcome to the human club. You are self-actualized and manifesting right now, bro. So obviously Falcons, they say they don't have any ties to the Saudi Arabian PIF, but they are, of course, being disingenuous. Before we even get into the fact that they have a bunch of secret investors that they've never told us who they are and never will, and no one will compel them to do so, even though it's like Valve's rules that you have to declare who your investors are. They also are sponsored by the Saudi Arabian state telecom company to the tune of what I would imagine is a lot of fucking money, because that's the game that we're playing. Let's be clear, the Esports World Cup has been created not just as a sports washing exercise, but also it's been created ultimately so Falcons can win that tournament over and over and over and over again, give themselves a bunch of stars and synthesize prestige, because that is literally what Saudi Arabian sports is all about. It's happening right now in football with the revamped World Club Cup that no one's watching. It's just what they do. It's what they've always done. So anyway, it was very clear that once they failed, they were going to spend more money. And they're going to keep spending money, by the way, until every tournament they walk into is a guaranteed win, or at least a guaranteed position in the finals. That's pretty much the game that they're playing. Now, why would they sign Kyousuke if that's the case? Well, first of all, he was available. There was a lot going on behind the scenes that people may or may not be aware of. So let's just talk about that first of all. Kyousuke is a 17-year-old starlet that is certainly good enough to be on the first team for Team Spirit. But he was never brought in for whatever reason. The organization clearly didn't want to put him into the team. There were rumors going on behind the scenes. Nothing I heard from a credible source, but people were certainly saying it, that Donk was pissed off at having to carry the team, and he wanted some help, and he wanted Kyousuke brought into the team, and the organization didn't want to do it for whatever reason. That's what people were saying. I didn't hear that from anyone I would trust 100%. But what I did hear from someone I would trust 100% is Kyousuke got so pissed off not being brought into the team that he pretty much said, it doesn't matter if you bring me into the team now, I want to leave. And I want to go to Falcons. And I want to play with Munacy. And I want to play with Nico. And so, ultimately, Spirit were pretty much put into this position where it's like, okay, we'll sell him, but we're going to sell him for big money. And once you agree to that, there's only one organization that right now can pay big money in Counter-Strike, and that is Falcons. And that is obviously what Falcons came in and did. Now, as we'll get to a little bit later in the stream with the Battle of the Leakers segment, people have disputed what it is. Overdrive, who works for Team Spirit, has claimed it's a $2 million buyout. By the way, he should know, right? And why would you leak it? You work for the org. Why is he allowed to leak it still? I'll never understand it. He's leaking about how Magisk has been cut as well on his Telegram. You work for Spirit. Like, I don't understand how this is tenable. Maybe this is just how they do things out there, but I don't understand why I would have an employee that leaks all of my company secrets publicly. Explicitly against the terms of being employed, but whatever. We'll get into that later. And, of course, the Saudis have said, no, we didn't pay that. I'll tell you for absolute fact, it's north of $1 million. They wouldn't have sold him for less. This is the way for Spirit to essentially make it mutually beneficial. But here's the other aspect to it, right? Kyousuke, as we've established, he hasn't played a Tier 1 game. I mean, look, again, let's just take a look at his stats page, because why not? You'll see a very impressive stat line. But ultimately, in terms of the teams that he's playing, these are all teams that ultimately, put it this way, there's a number of players out there in the world that could get similar stats against these teams. What does it tell us? It broadly suggests he's ready for Tier 1, but beyond that, it doesn't suggest anything else. It tells us that he's capable of playing at Tier 1 already. Fair enough. But is he going to dominate Tier 1? Is he going to translate these stats through to Tier 1? What kind of roles is he going to get when he's on Falcons? Because you imagine that Nico's still going to be the star, so where does he fit in? Remember, he's coming in for Magisk as well. Magisk was the anchor. They're probably going to have to move Tez as the anchor. So what's going on? But anyway, you can see there that, sure, he looks decent. Very decent. A great prospect. But that's not why Falcons are signing him. Because Falcons don't make signings for the same reasons a normal organization would. Falcons are signing Kyousuke purely and simply because he is the most talked about player right now. And when you're talking about Kyousuke, you're not talking about how Falcons are a shitty fucking team that's propped up by state money and have ultimately rode through Counter-Strike with a rapacious mindset and fucking destroyed lineup after lineup after lineup, career after career after career, and have exactly one trophy to show for it. And now it's like, well, if we keep signing popular players and you're talking about them, you're not talking about all the other shit. And that's why they're signing him. Yes, he's going to be a good player. Yes, you know, they've got the money to spend. But ultimately, there's more to it than that. And so when it comes to bringing him in, it's going to be very, very interesting because I don't think you're going to see Donk 2. I don't think you're going to see Donk 2. I think that level of expectation is crazy. And let's be real. What do we really know about Kyousuke other than he's ready for Tier 1? He's a 17-year-old kid. He seems to be pretty quiet, although I will add that he's going to probably fit in perfectly in the Falcons mindset because he was streaming on Twitch where he was like rating fucking the attractiveness of other women streamers. So, sure, probably fits in. But you can see here how they're billing it. And I also think this is not a good idea. But Falcons knows best. They're saying it's from potential to perfection. The lineup is locked. Spoiler, the Falcons lineup is never locked. If you play for Falcons, you are never safe. Falcons doesn't value a single contribution of any of its players. You are all expendable. All that matters is getting that star at the esports World Cup, winning tournaments, and having MBS come out and shake your hand while everyone stands up and applauds. That's all it's about. It's got nothing to do with your individual glory, your career, nothing. It's shut up, here's a bag of money, shut the fuck up, understand what you are. You are a cog in a very fucking big machine. And that's it. That's all you are. And so they're saying the lineup is locked. It isn't. They're saying the lineup is perfect. Well, I certainly wouldn't be heaping that amount of pressure on a 17-year-old kid, one who has no Tier 1 experience. There are these things in sports, you see, that we call the intangibles. And what intangibles are exactly that. It's something you cannot quantify in a statistical manner. It's something that you can't quite necessarily show to somebody else when you want to make an assessment about a player's ability or performance. And certainly when it comes to esports, when it comes to just competitive sports in general, there are things that are intangible. That, like, for instance, how that individual will cope with pressure, or how that individual will cope when things in their personal lives aren't going particularly well, or how that player will react to certain other personality types, be it age or nationality or language or culture or religion or whatever it could be that might trigger some form of underperformance from them. And ultimately, when you slot a young player into a team, they've got to be incredibly mature, able to handle taking instruction, able to handle pressure, able to handle sometimes, being dropped or benched or whatever it might be, not necessarily appropriate in the esports example, but very often you'll find, because of a lack of maturity, because they are by definition immature, they can't cope with these things. And so Donk is a phenom, and in the same way Ziwu is, in that these guys were put into an insane spotlight very early on, and Ziwu is probably the best I've ever seen at handling it. He remains humble. He's never said anything crazy, never been embroiled in a scandal. Think about Simple when he was young. I mean, and listen, Donk handles the media side of the fucking business like total ass. The community just give him a pass for it because he's the best player in the world right now. And that's how that works. Kyousuke could be, I don't know, he could be a basket case under pressure. He's never played on a big stage with a crowd that are like cheating to get somebody to flank on him, or, he's constantly being wrecked by somebody and everyone's like, laughing and booing him and all of this stuff. That's never happened to him yet. And trust me, it's part of the experience. It's part of the development experience. You're not instantly going to go to play in a stadium with 10,000 people chanting for the other team potentially, and just shrug that off and play your best game. It doesn't work about that. Every time you miss a shot, people are going to highlight it. Think what happened to Simple in the Mongols game. Plays beyond expectation to get FaZe into the playoffs, which we all agreed shouldn't be happening, with a new roster plus a stand-in. And a stand-in who hadn't played seriously competitively for 2 years, despite a brief stint in Falcons. And when he misses a shot, plays below par, people are there to shit on you. Well, welcome to the big leagues. So I'll be very intrigued to see how he copes with it all, because not everybody can have that aura, as the kids say. And trust me, there's a bunch of new pressures that come with the money and with the success. That's before we get into anything in your personal life. And let me just say, if you're the kind of guy that's going to sit there and rate the attractiveness of chicks on a fucking Twitch screen, right, and do that and not think this could be a problem before a big money move, you're probably going to have some issues down the road when said chicks might be in your orbit. Now, that being said, the player that he is replacing is, of course, Magisk. And this really underlines exactly kind of what Falcons is as an organization. Magisk is someone that, yes, he hasn't been playing particularly well of late. You can see overall, the last few months, the stats haven't been good. Now, Reddit always tells me if you play anchor positions, it's okay to have bad stats. That's the rule, apparently. They say that for everyone, except Jimmy, because now that Jimmy's had a bit of a drop-off, he's bad, apparently. But, again, Reddit does play favourites and talks bollocks consistently. We'll get into that later as well. But you can see here that, ultimately, across this tournament, he had some pretty big fucking standout performances. He actually dragged them through some maps. And when you think about that, and then you go a little bit further back and you look at some of the other tournaments, when he pulled out some of his best performances, it was against tier 1 opposition. You couldn't say that Magisk was totally washed. And what they've done by getting rid of Magisk is they've also missed out on the potential of having that secondary IGL if anything goes wrong with Kixan. It will now have to be Nico. So for any reason they cut Kixan, Nico is now the IGL. So, you know, that's another thing to watch out for. I don't know if he's got the chops for it. All of his Serbian buddies tell me he does, right? But they say lots of things, don't they? I'm not so sure. But Magisk would have been tailor-made for that role. And indeed, I imagine wherever he ends up next, or perhaps even prior to moving to an organization, I think he will announce that he's moving into an in-game leadership role very soon. Remember, people say, oh, he's only done it for a little bit in Astralis. He did it for a year. That's how long he did it for on Astralis. That's how long Glaive was out. And Magisk was the covering guy for him. So, but anyway, Magisk was cut despite probably being their best player at the major overall. Certainly the most impactful. And you just get cut. You can see here as well, we've got a post. He says it's time for the next chapter. With the Austin Major now having concluded, I've officially moved to the Falcons bench. The time has now come to look to the next chapter of my career. I feel eager and hungry as ever and can't wait to continue my journey at the highest level of CS and show you what I'm capable of. I'd like to thank all my teammates in Falcons. Although things didn't work out the way we wanted, it's been a great learning experience for me. Now, where could he possibly end up in this great roster mania that's coming? I don't know. Frankly, I think there's probably a number of players you would rather gamble on than take Magisk. But for some teams, there's certainly perhaps a desire to get some experience in there. And he could certainly be beneficial to one of the smaller organizations, you know, further down the trough, so to speak. Now, who that would be, whether he'd want to play there, particularly after, you know, remember, sitting on the bench at Falcons is probably going to net him a bigger salary than if he played for a team like, for instance, Gamer Legion. So it's really about how much he wants to play. I think one move that, well, there's a couple of moves that would leap out to me. NIP, he could probably go to NIP, replace one of the Portuguese players, maybe you jerks. That would be a step in the right direction for them. I know obviously they've got Shush putting up big numbers and play it, and there could be some role overlap there. But ultimately, I think the experience will be good for that roster. And I think you can't have the most successful version of NIP and have both of those Portuguese players on that roster. And I think Arozdos, as everyone calls him, I call him Aradoche. You know, but I think he could go there. He could also replace Snacks on G2. This is a lot less likely, but he could go to G2 replace Snacks, you get an anchor. Hunter takes over as IGL. That could happen. But I think probably overall, if I was making a move now, I would cut NAF and bring in Magisk. It's a like-for-like replacement. I think Magisk has shown he's capable of a higher level of impact. NAF kind of feels done right now. I know he's like a popular player, but NAF himself has said he expects to get cut. So probably that's what I do. Probably the most likely move. Liquid obviously now as well because of the way they've changed VRS. They are a European team. You may as well lean into that. I still think keep Twists as obviously a star player, provided he wants to stay there. There's a chance he might want to go back to FaZe. Who knows? Looks like FaZe aren't going to keep Simple. But whatever, we will be covering Rostermania later. Rostermania is already underway. And it's going to be a big one. So, back to the Kyousuke move. Now, as I said, there's going to have to be some shuffling around because this doesn't necessarily work directly, just as a like for like. I also don't know, in terms of Tier 1, what his best positions are going to be and where he's likely to play on what maps. So, it's going to be a learning curve. They're going to have to work pretty hard to bet him in. I still think this is a bit of a gamble overall. I think this is a lot of money for a young player. And I remember we all said the same thing when G2 paid $600,000 for Munacy from Na'Vi Academy. And we had very similar data to work on. That move worked out, but he was the most expensive rookie signing in the world at that time. Now Kyousuke wears that mantle. So we will see whether or not it can work. And indeed, whether or not Dexter and Magisk can find some homes. I'll also add, you'll probably see these guys move in this Rostermania because, once again, Falcons aren't like other organizations. They don't really need the buyout money. They won't keep these players in contract jail either. Why? Because they want these two players to be out talking about how great Falcons are, which they will do. So we shall definitely see. But I think overall, this is like a huge gamble. There's no guarantees that this guy is going to come out of the traps and fucking start as he has been with his 1.29 rating in the academy teams and the lower and lesser teams and the tier 2 teams and immediately translate that to tier 1. And let me tell you, if the first game, the debut game, which will be one of the most watched games, no matter where that tournament is, where it's set to be. In fact, let's have a look. Where would it be? Cologne. So one of the biggest tournaments on the calendar, one of the most high-stakes tournaments on the calendar, contributes to the Grand Slam as well, is regarded to be on a par with a major by the community. You're coming in, by the way, because of all the fucking Saudi string-pulling fuckery behind the scenes, it's already unbelievably stacked, and you've pretty much got the top 10 teams in the world there. And that's your debut as a 17-year-old. Are they going to fissure before that? Oof, they are. Well, actually, this isn't a bad idea. It softens the blow of going to Cologne, I suppose. Still, a lot of good teams in attendance at that. Yeah, mysteriously, they only skip PGLs, guys. I can't explain why, but it's almost like there was something going on behind the scenes. So, it's official. We've got the lineup for Falcons that we expected that we were going to get for months now. Kyousuke is about to be playing away in Tier 1. We're going to find out how truly good this kid is over the next couple of tournaments. And we're going to see whether or not this $1 million gamble pays off. For me, it is a gamble. Anybody that thinks otherwise is crazy. Even if he is successful, you can only really say it was guaranteed with the benefit of hindsight. The merch store. The No Majors Club merch is still going to be there for another 4 weeks or so. So if you want to get yourself a No Majors Club t-shirt or a No Majors Club hoodie, make sure you do. Big Gull has been flying off the shelves more than any of the other stuff that we have to offer. The Big Gull t-shirts is by way and above our biggest seller. I've had loads of people DMing me pictures of them in the Big Gull shirts. So maybe next event that I go to, There'll be Big Gull in the stands. So we have just a Richard Lewis logo tee, my head right in the middle of your chest. For some reason you would want that. And the Richard Lewis Reports mugs are back. And those will probably be permanent rather than the short-term stuff, that we're doing with the No Majors Club, etc. Because obviously these are going to be out before the next No Majors Club at Budapest, where we'll probably do another merch run, which will be themed around Hungary, of all things. So, lots of pictures of Orban on to be incorporated, which you can wear with pride, no doubt. Anyway, thanks to everyone that's bought merch, and if you haven't and you want to take advantage of it, please do. And remember, if you're on the Patreon, there is a post with a 10% discount code for Patreon subscribers.